The story begins with Frank Hopkins and his Mustang, aka Hidalgo, engaging in a long-distance race. They catch up and defeated the stock-up gentleman. While enjoying a victory drink in the bar, Frank receives an order from a young officer. The orders was to dispatch a letter to the 7th Cavalry Regiment that was located next to an Indian reservation named Wounded Knee. Frank arrives, observes the reservation, conveys the message to the officers, and then departs. The instructions were to disarm the Indians, which would push them to rebel and provide a reason to shoot them. When Hidalgo hears the gunshot, he directs Frank back to the reservation. Upon arriving to the reservation, Frank was horrified seeing the massacre. These images of dead Indians will send Frank into depression. 8 months later, Frank and Hidalgo will later join the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. Frank plays the hero of the Wounded Knee tribe, who is now an alcoholic. During the show, one of the Indian actors asked Frank in assisting in helping to save the Mustangs due to the fact the government intends to kill them all. After the show, an Arabian guy named Aziz approaches Bill and asks him about his claims that Hidalgo is the best racing horse alive. He is accompanied by an Englishman. Aziz gets a tantrum with Frank and wanted his claims to be dropped since he believed Arabian horses are superior. They went further to challenge him to an invitation race across the Arabian desert called Oceans of Fire. An annual 3,000 miles race across the desert. Winner is awarded $100,000. Frank and Hidalgo left for the Middle East. They had an altercation on the ship but was saved by Lady Davenport. Davenport insists her female horse must win the competition in order to obtain breeding privilege with the Sheikh's stallion. When they arrive to the Middle East, Frank is given a servant or caretaker for his horse before preparing for the race. The race began and the horse sprints off. Later on down the desert, the horse is slowed down. A racer's horse was severely injured during the race, causing him to unalive it. Frank and Hidalgo stood and watched in terror, but a Sheik rider cautions Frank that assisting other riders is against the rules. There's a rider named Prince Sacker who dislikes Frank with passion. He didn't even want him to be in the race. He even went as far as in bribing a military contingent along the route not to provide water to Hopkins. When Frank arrived, he was denied water by the military men. Frank and Hildalgo were compelled to battle for it, followed by an uppercut, blindfolding, snatching the water before fleeing. Moments later, while feeding Hidalgo, he spots a sandstorm approaching. Frank and Hidalgo race against the sandstorm to seek refuge in an abandoned city. After a day of rigorous racing in the hot desert, they reach the halfway point. The Sheikh's daughter, Jazira, shows up in Frank's tent. She tries to inform Frank how he should stay alive in the race, providing him with dates and camel butter to survive the next leg of the race. In Jazira's case, reason why she wanted Frank to win because she didn't want Sakr the prince to win the race to avoid being his fifth wife. Moments later, her security Jaffa and Aziz enters the tent, accidentally knocking Frank on top of Jazira. They assumed Jazira was doing something dishonorable. Frank was handcuffed to a pole as punishment and warned he will suffer the same fate of a stallion who can no longer breed. He then has a clear understanding they're going to attempt to remove his testicles. All of a sudden, raiders attack the camp, and everyone except Aziz is engaged in the battle. Aziz steals the Sheikh's manual on horse breeding. The Sheikh's daughter ultimately gets abducted. After defending the camp, the Sheikh couldn't find his book. However, the Sheikh and Frank figure out that Aziz knows where she is in the book, so Frank beats the answer out of him. The answer was, Jazira is being held captive by his nephew Katib, who wants the Sheikh's horse. Frank, Aziz, and Jaffa took a trip to the nephew's city to make the exchange. After the exchange, the nephew notices black dust on his hands after petting the horse. Of course, it was the wrong horse. They flee, not before Jaffa gets shot by Aziz. Then Aziz gets speared by Jaffa after he attempted to kill Jazira. Returning to the camp, the Sheikh thanks Frank for rescuing his daughter. Later that night in camp, Lady Davenport offers Frank 30% of the prize money if he abandons the race. Frank, however, declined the offer. Davenport went above and beyond by offering her behind, but Frank walks away. Next day, the race continues. Somewhere in the desert, Lady Davenport was traveling with a group till they got attacked by bandits led by Katib. However, she convinces Katib to steal the Sheikh's horse, kill Hidalgo, and leave Frank to die the desert. Accomplishing these sinister plans will help her horse win the race. The sinister plans were put into motion. Cadib bandits chase Frank and the Sheikh's horse riding by the prince. The prince gets away. Unfortunately, Frank and Hidalgo fell into a pit trap. Hidalgo gets speared, injuring its leg. Fortunately, Frank was able to remove the spear. He will later be saved by another rider who drags them out the pit. Not too far, Cadib releases a pair of cheetahs to attack. Hidalgo and the rider's horse try stomping them out the way. Hidalgo succeed, but the other got killed by Cadib. Cadib then turns his attention to Frank. The two got into a fight back and forth till Khatib found himself on top of his own trap. Frank pulls the trigger on the trap, causing Cadib to fall and get speared to death. With raising brutal heat in the desert, Hidalgo was about half dead, and Frank was about to put him out its misery. Frank reframes himself and sings an Indian lullaby. Suddenly, ghost warriors starts appearing. Adding salt to injury, the prince rider came along and mocks him, telling him he lost the race before it started. All of a sudden, the prince was shocked seeing Hidalgo raising up. It was clear to the prince the race was far from over. He gallops away as the race is still in effect. Meanwhile, close to the finishing line, Lady Davenport's horse is well in the lead. However, the Sheikh's horse was gaining ground on Davenport's mare. Out from nowhere, Frank appears from behind. He is now playing catch-up in the race. He passes Davenport's mare, then goes after the Sheikh's horse. Frank turns on the afterburner, then gains ground on the prince. He comes even with the prince, then pulls away into the lead and wins the race. The crowd erupts with celebration and in disbelief, due to the fact he was the underdog in the race. Hidalgo goes across the finishing line to the beach to drink water as a mob of people cheer them on. Back in United States, a corral filled with Mustangs belonging to the government is about to be slaughtered. Frank arrives to inform the officers to free the Mustang after using his prize money to pay for their freedom. After keeping his word to his Indian friend, Frank was sadly told that his friend had passed away. Frank watched in silent joy watching the horses run free. He then releases Hidalgo with the rest of the Mustangs. After a brief goodbye sad stare, Hidalgo runs free with the Mustangs. What do you think? Do you think this is a great motivational story? Feel free to leave a comment. Thanks you for watching. If you like classic recaps like these, please don't forget to like or subscribe to make this channel grow.